Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into it, looking at Genesis chapters 3 through 10.
Yeah, foundational stuff. You brought this section up, and there's just so much packed in there.
Absolutely. Our goal is kind of peel back the layers, find the core ideas, maybe some details folks miss.
Exactly. It's the story after the beginning, Choices, big consequences, and how that early human-divine relationship starts to take shape.
It moves fast, too,
Yeah.
from Eden to, well, a world completely changed.
A real whirlwind.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
So, chapter 3, the fall, the serpent.
Right, the serpent. It doesn't just say disobey God, does it? It's
Yeah.
more persuasive.
It really is. It questions the motive, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Suggests God's holding back something good, this idea of opening your eyes.
offering a different perspective almost. Very tempting.
Plays right into that desire for knowledge, for being, well, like God.
And Eve takes the bait, eats the fruit, shares it with Adam, and bam, shame.
Yeah, that sudden awareness, they realize they're naked. It's not just physical, though.
No, it feels deeper. Like innocence lost, a break in connection.
A fractured awareness, definitely. Yeah. And that leads straight to God's response, the consequences, or the curses.
Yeah, specific ones. The serpent, Eve facing pain in childbirth, Adam having to toil for food.
It paints a picture of hardship, struggle, a huge shift from the ease of Eden.
The whole relationship with the ground changes for Adam, right?
So-
Thorns and thistles.
Exactly, harmony's broken. But, and this is crucial, right in the middle of that judgment,
Genesis 3.15.
yes, that mention of offspring, the heel and the head. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel.
Even if you're reading this fresh, it jumps out. This hint of a future resolution, a savior.
It's widely seen that way. The very first glimmer of redemption, right alongside the fallout, suggests the story isn't over.
God's plan isn't just ending with failure.
Precisely. Human failure isn't the last word. There's still a path forward towards restoration,
And then they're out of Eden, the tree of life guarded, no going back.
symbolizing that loss of immortality, that perfect harmony. Okay, so then chapter 4.
Cain and Abel, the first siblings, the first conflict, their offerings.
Yeah, the offerings are key. Abel's is accepted, Cain's isn't. Why?
The text implies maybe it's about the heart behind it, Abel bringing the best genuine faith.
That's the common understanding. Abel's offering reflecting a desire to please God, whereas Cain's, maybe it lacked that sincerity or the right substance,
And that rejection just fuels this intense jealousy in Cain.
which boils over into the first murder. Just like that, human-on-human violence enters the story. Shocking.
Really is. Shows the destructive potential of envy, anger when it's not checked.
And God confronts Cain, right? The punishment is exile, being a wanderer,
But there's also that mark. God puts a mark on him for protection.
which is fascinating. Even in severe judgment, there's this element of maybe mercy, or at least a boundary. It's complex.
Justice and protection somehow together.
Then we see Cain's line developing civilization. Cities, music, tools.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Human ingenuity pops up, even in this lineage marked by violence, culture developing. But the narrative kind of implies sin continues down that line too.
It does seem to suggest that. It's not a purely positive development.
Then contrast that with Seth's birth, Adam and Eve's next son.
Right. And through Seth's line, people begin to call on the name of the Lord. A different path emerges.
Hope seems centered there, a lineage seeking God, unlike Cain's descendants.
It highlights that choice, really. Self-interest versus seeking the divine. That thread continues.
Okay, so chapter 5, the genealogy. Adam down to Noah, lots of names, big ages.
Those long lifespans always grab attention, maybe hinting at, a different kind of vitality back then, closer to the original state.
Could be, but you also get that constant refrain, and he died, over and over.
A stark reminder, isn't it? Even with long life, death is the reality after the fall.
Until Enoch. His story just breaks the pattern completely.
He walked with God, and then, poof, God took him. No death mentioned.
It's such a standout detail. What does that suggest?
Profound intimacy, maybe. A relationship so close, it bypassed the normal course of death. Shows incredible divine favor. A hint of life beyond.
A powerful image. But then, chapter 6, the mood darkens a lot.
Oh, yeah. Big shift. Widespread corruption, violence filling the earth. It gets really bleak.
So bad that God expresses regret. Regret over creating humanity. That's intense.
It's a heavy statement, shows just how far things had gone, the depth of the wickedness, God's profound disappointment.
But like a light in the darkness, there's Noah.
Noah stands out. Righteous, blameless, finds favor in the eyes of the Lord.
He's the exception in this generation, faithful when pretty much everyone else wasn't.
And his righteousness becomes the pivot point for God's plan.
Which is build an ark, a massive boat.
Huge undertaking, specific instructions, save your family, pairs of all animals from a coming flood.
The scale is mind-boggling. Imagine hearing that command.
Requires incredible faith, right?
Yeah.
And obedience. Building this giant thing, probably facing ridicule. Just remarkable commitment.
Which brings us to chapter 7 and 8, the flood itself.
Noah does it. Gets everyone and everything aboard. Then the rains come.
40 days, 40 nights, waters covering everything, even the mountains. Total destruction outside the ark.
It's presented as a massive, cataclysmic judgment. A cleansing, almost a decreation before a recreation.
But then, amidst all that, God remembered Noah.
Yes. After 150 days of the waters prevailing, God steps in. The waters start to go down.
Slowly, gradually. The ark finally rests on mountains, Mount Ararat.
A turning point, but they're still inside, waiting. How do they know it's safe?
That's where the birds come in. First the raven,
Which goes back and forth, doesn't tell them much.
then the dove. First time finds nothing, second time.
It comes back with an olive leaf, freshly picked.
Such a powerful symbol. What's the significance there?
Hope, renewal, life returning after the devastation. Proof that vegetation is growing again, the earth is healing.
And finally, the dove doesn't return. Time to leave.
They emerge. And Noah's first act, builds an altar, worships God.
Gratitude. Acknowledging their deliverance sets the tone for the new beginning.
Absolutely, a fundamental response to salvation. Okay, chapter 9.
The new beginning. God blesses Noah and his sons. Be fruitful and multiply, like a reset.
It is reinforcing that original purpose for humanity to fill the earth. A second chance.
And then the covenant, God's promise.
The covenant with Noah, his descendants, and every living creature, sealed by the rainbow.
Never again a flood to destroy all life. That rainbow becomes the sign.
A constant, visible reminder of God's faithfulness, his mercy. It's a promise for all time.
God also lays down some ground rules for this new era.
Yeah, guidelines about the sanctity of life, instituting justice for bloodshed. Really important.
Why specifically those, do you think, right after the flood?
Well, given that violence and corruption led to the flood, establishing the value of life and a system for justice seems crucial, right? To prevent sliding back into chaos, setting a moral foundation.
Makes sense. But then, Noah's drunkenness, Ham's disrespect.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder, even after this massive reset, human fallibility is still right there.
The flood washed away wicked people, but not the potential for sin itself.
Exactly. Noah, the righteous man, still stumbles. Ham acts shamefully, leads to that curse on Canaan. It shows the complexity isn't gone.
Yeah.
Human nature persists.
Sets the stage for future problems, really.
It does. Even salvation doesn't instantly perfect people. Okay, finally, chapter 10.
The Table of Nations. Feels like a genealogy list again.
It is, tracing the descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Noah's sons. But it's more than just a list.
What's the bigger picture here?
It's explaining the origin of all the different peoples and nations known to the ancient Israelites, showing how everyone, all these diverse groups, languages, lands,
They all trace back to Noah's family after the flood.
that's the idea presented here. It grounds the diversity of the world in God's plan for humanity to spread out and populate the earth.
So diversity isn't an accident, it's part of the design.
That seems to be the implication. Every nation, every culture has its roots in this post-flood beginning, part of God's broader purpose. It suggests an inherent value in that variety.
Interesting way to frame the world's cultures. All right, so wrapping this section up, Genesis 3 through 10. Wow, it's quite a stretch. From losing paradise, through sin escalating, judgment, and then this massive reset with Noah.
We see these themes again and again. Choices have consequences, sin spreads.
But also grace, divine promises, faithfulness, even when humanity messes up repeatedly.
God stays committed even through dramatic, world-altering events.
That faithfulness is a constant thread. Despite the cycles of failure, there's always a path forward offered.
So maybe a final thought to leave folks with. We see this cycle: disobedience, consequence, judgment, but also promise and a new start. Thinking about that pattern in these ancient stories, what does it tell us about, well, us, our own choices today? And how does this ancient understanding of God interacting with humanity, how does it still resonate?
Yeah, how do these narratives about failure and hope speak to our own world, our own challenges and aspirations? Lots to chew on there.
Definitely something to reflect on. Thanks for digging into this with us.